Welcome back to the program. So let's talk about this signal scandal, which of course is not a scandal, okay? Here's my response that I put on X today to this quote-unquote scandal, all right? It's titled, "No Signal, All Noise." Let me get this straight. A tiny and very insignificant unforced error made by competent cabinet members who successfully took out multiple terrorists, and the Democrats are grabbing onto this nothing burger with extra cheese and a dash of Russian disinformation dressing like it was the last rubber dinghy on the Titanic. Democrats got completely smoked in the last election like Hunter Biden's crack pipe on an all-nighter in a Las Vegas whorehouse. They have had their teeth kicked in for 65 days straight, and they think an inadvertent text chain message leaked by a Trump-hating prostitute from the sinking Atlantic is going to somehow distract or derail this administration. How about a little news flash for the Democrats, huh? Let's see. Number one, you have zero power. Number two, you don't control any branches of the federal government. You have no leadership, and, best of all, you are less popular than an infected scrotum. This signal bullshit, which is exactly what it is, reeks of more desperation than a trans-Tifa terrorist trying to tuck his rainbow-glittered balls into a prom dress. One tiny little misstep, and of course the Democrats are running to their fake news studios faster than J.B. Prickster, huffing and puffing his way to an all-you-can-eat buffet that is about to close. Let's do a little truth talk, shall we? Democrats left 14,000 people behind in Talibanistan, and they allowed 13 of our service members to be murdered when they knew the bomb was going to go off. And, of course, you had Maoist Milley working with his Chinese counterparts, as well as letting them know that if there ever was a surprise attack, that he was going to tell them. So he, of course, is a treasonous bastard. Next, you have Kankles McPantsuit, right? Hildebeest, and of course Susan Rice Patty, abandoned our brave soldiers in Benghazi. They even refused multiple calls for reinforcements. All that information was put forward in investigations and hearings, right? And they allowed the ambassador, Christopher Stevens, to be dragged, beaten, pummeled, murdered, and paraded around through Benghazi like some type of a trophy. Were any of those people prosecuted? No, of course not. Rice, of course, we know, quote, blamed it on a video, and we know what Hillary McPantsuit said, right? Well, what difference does it make? Well, it makes a lot of difference, but yet neither one of them have been held accountable. Sick. Speaking of Kankles McPantsuit, didn't she put her server in her bathroom? And also, when she was subpoenaed for 33,000 emails, instead of handing them over, what did she do? Well, she used bleach bit and she destroyed them. Was she ever held accountable for that? No, of course not. She was not prosecuted, sadly. What about Adam Pencilneck Schiff for brains, huh? Here's a guy that's been lying to Congress. He lied about Trump's phone call with Zelensky. He even took Trump's words, discarded them, made up his own words, lied, plagiarized, and yet nothing. He has not been prosecuted. Unreal. What about Eric Swallowswell, right? He was banging Fang Fang, the CCP spy, and of course Fartswell was never prosecuted either. Bella Lugosi, a.k.a. Tide Pod Nancy, right? A Speaker of the House who, ironically, can't speak, sat behind our great president and at the end of his State of the Union address took his speech like a petulant child and destroyed it. which, by the way, is U.S. Code 181001, which is destroying property of the government. But she was never prosecuted either. Or how about the demented, illegitimate pants shitter and thief who did his own quid pro Joe? If you don't fire the prosecutor, you're not getting the $1 billion, right? Well, hell, look what happened. The prosecutor got fired, right? Not only was there not even an investigation, but of course he also did not get prosecuted. What about the fact that he had classified documents in his Corvette in the trunk of his car in his garage? Classified documents. Did he get in trouble? No. Well, he's an old man with a bad memory. Unbelievable. Let's see. The list of actual crimes committed by Democrats is longer than Heels Up Headboard Harris's liquor cabinet. Okay? So, to the Democrats out there, here's a quote signal for all of you, all right? For all you mouth breathers out there. You can take your self-righteous, pearl-clutching fake outrage and shove it straight up Jerry Noxious Nadler's cornhole. That's what you can do. And don't forget, your approval rating is at 7%. Bernstein out. That's what I put on X today, and, well, it has 4,000 views, so that's a nice thing. A lot of people approved of my comedic delivery there. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is this. A lot of people are upset right now, and they're upset because Lindsey Graham-nesty has been endorsed by President Trump. And I'm seeing it all over social media. How could he stand behind that RINO? Look, I get it. I completely get it on this. So here is what I put out after reading, and again, you really do have to read Trump's Truth Social endorsement. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read his endorsement first, and then I'll explain why I believe that he did this, okay? Lindsey Graham has been a wonderful friend to me and has always been there when I needed him the most. As the chair of the Senate Budget Committee, keep that in mind, Lindsey is fighting tirelessly to grow the economy, lower taxes, and eliminate government waste. Lindsey is also relentlessly focused on helping us secure the border, stop migrant crime, strongly supports our great military vets and veterans, promotes American energy dominance, defends our always under siege Second Amendment, and ensures peace through strength. Senator Lindsey Graham has my complete and total endorsement for re-election. He will not let you down. Everyone in South Carolina should help Lindsey have a big win next year. Now, obviously, people are up in arms about this endorsement, but let me see if I can kind of help out a little bit by deciphering the reason why I believe he did this. Here is what I came up with. Many Trump supporters are upset that President Trump endorsed Lindsey Graham-nesty today. I understand their frustration, as Lindsey Graham-nesty is the epitome of a Washington RINO. This is a very risky endorsement by the president for many reasons, and it could go south on him. However, after analyzing his endorsement and his statement further, sadly, I understand why he did it. Number one, Graham is the chairman of the Senate Budget Committee. President Trump will need his full cooperation with making the tax cuts permanent and, of course, codifying the DOGE cuts as well. The other thing is this. He is also the ranking member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. This means that with all the Trump haters and the RINOs like Murkowski and Collins and what's the other idiot's name that took over for Mitt Romney, Lewis, I think his name is, in Utah, you've got a couple of really nasty RINOs in the Senate, sadly. And so what he's basically doing here is he's trying to secure the ability to not have investigations done because, again, Lindsey Graham is a ranking member on that committee. So if the left and the RINOs get together and say, we want to investigate this whole signal thing, well, he can shut that down because they're going to need his vote out of committee in order to facilitate moving to the next step, which would be either a full Senate vote or possibly some type of special, investigator or special counsel or some other bullshit. But I don't even think it's going to go anywhere near that as well. But the other thing is, think about this. What happens if we have a vacancy on the Supreme Court? God forbid. Well, guess what? The RINOs, Murkowski and Collins, will vote against whoever he chooses. So we only have 53 seats. We need to make sure that the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee will be able to get all the votes that we need in order to pass whoever the potential future Supreme Court justice may be. So, Lindsey Graham, in conclusion, is a terrible, terrible senator, but Trump needs him now to pass his agenda and vote against opening up frivolous investigations. I will admit it's a gamble, but it is one that he and his advisors saw as a necessary evil. So, that is my commentary and thought process on why he was doing this, okay? Now, the other thing that I want to cover is some good news. Now, again, this is not codified, sadly, and it needs to be codified, but it's a start in the right direction. Yesterday, President Trump signed an executive order that did quite a bit for election integrity. But again, it's just an executive order, meaning what? Meaning that it could always be taken down by the next president, God forbid, in the future. So we need to codify this stuff. Now, he also said that they're working on legislation to try to codify some of these things. And I think one of the things that they're looking at is mandatory voter ID, which I have been screaming for since day one of his new term. Okay? But this is what this executive order does. It requires documentary, that's a weird word, should be documentation, I guess it's a typo, government issued proof of U.S. citizenship on all voter registration forms. That is an excellent ad. It also conditions federal election-related funds to states complying with the integrity measures set forth by federal law. So that means if they decide to not do this, or they try to skate around this, or they refuse to ask for ID and all that other stuff, they're going to get cut off financially, okay? The other thing is it directs the updating of the Voluntary Voting System Guidelines 2.0 and security standards for voting equipment, which includes requiring a voter verifiable paper ballot record and not using ballots in which the counted vote is contained within a barcode or QR code. Now, let me stop right there. I want to see the machines gone, okay? I'll be the first to tell you, you've heard it from me, it's in Preserving Liberty, I say it all the time. It would be very simple to do. All you would have to do is do a new executive order and say, I hereby declare all 50 states, if you continue to use the machines in the next election, you are going to be completely cut off financially. And I'm talking everything. Police, fire, garbage, you name it. The entire state, whoever decides not to, is going to have no funding. Now, would that be popular? Hell no. People would be up in arms, they'd be protesting and everything else. But you know what? These people would get in line and they'd ship out these stupid machines. So what does he say here? He says that the machines would now be required to also spit out a record, if you will, of your vote. So let's say you have a state that has the machines that you touch the screen. Mine doesn't, thankfully, but there's a lot of states that do. You go in there and you pick President Trump, or you pick, Republican, whatever, and then all of a sudden you wonder, gee, was my vote, categorized the right way? Did it record for the person I asked, this and that? Well, in some states, not many, but in some red states, they do spit out a little sheet that shows exactly who you voted for so that it matches up with the screen. What this does is it makes that permanent for every state. So if you're going to continue to use the machines, which again, I want to get rid of, let me be on record, I don't want these machines, but if we're going to have them, then every single one of them, at least at this point until we can get rid of them, should spit out a piece of paper with a record of who you voted for to make sure that it matches up with what you chose in the machine. So that is very, very important. It directs the Attorney General to enter into information sharing agreements with state election officials to identify cases of election fraud or other election law violations. Now, this is kind of interesting. So in other words, let's say you have a blue state like California and New York. They want to keep the Attorney General, who is obviously a Republican, out. They don't want to. If they're going to do their fraud, they don't want them to know about it. What this executive order does is it forces the communication between the Attorney General and the Department of Justice with the states, so that the Attorney General can act as an extra set of eyes on the state election, not to interfere in it, but if they see something fraudulent, they can step in. So I do like that as well. It takes appropriate action against states that count ballots received after Election Day in all elections. That is awesome, because how did they steal the 2020 election? Very simple. They went to these judges, these left-wing idiot judges, the secretaries of states. They usurped the power of the legislative branch, which is the ones that are supposed to control their elections, and instead they bypassed them. They went to a left-wing judge, and because it was, quote, a lockdown and COVID, they extended the days that you could count ballots or send ballots in after the election. They did it in Pennsylvania, they did it in Wisconsin, they did it in Michigan, they did it in Georgia, they did it in Arizona, they did it in Nevada. They did it all over the place. And they were counting ballots 7, 10, 12, 14 days. Well, we're not there yet. Trump's still winning. We got to get more and more of these votes in for Biden so we can overtake his lead. I mean, now this executive order stops that. Every single mail-in vote, which I want to get rid of mail-in voting too, believe me, but at least at this point, every single mail-in ballot has to be in and stamped before the election day, and none can be counted afterwards. So that is a huge, huge improvement. And what I think is one of the best things that it does is it revokes that disgusting, insidious, fraudulent executive order by the Biden regime, 14019, which, if you remember, turned all the federal agencies into basically Democrat voter turnout centers. So every single agency in the government under the Biden regime was working on, registering voters, bringing people in, getting illegals registered to vote. All of that is now gone as well. So these are great, great, great additions, but they're not permanent. They are through executive action. All of these great gains that we have gotten, it's all astroturf, sadly, because all of it can be reversed. So the next step is we've got to make sure that we can codify some of the things that they have been able to do. And quite frankly, out of everything going on, there's two things we got to do. We've got to make sure that it's mandatory for voter ID in every single state. And we need to ban, of course, all non-citizens at the local, regional, and federal levels, state levels, in every election, that they cannot vote at all. And if we do those two things, we have eliminated 35 to 40% of all of our voter fraud issues. Just getting those two things done. Of course, we want, to eliminate, mail-in ballot. We want to get rid of early voting. You know, it's ridiculous to have a voting season. You know, there's a lot of things we want to do, the sandbagging. I talk about it all in Preserving Liberty. But at least he's doing something. Now it's going to be up to us and Congress and putting pressure on Congress to codify all of these gains. So, wanted to kind of point that out. The other thing is this. How the hell can we possibly stop these damn judges, these radical, extreme judges? Democrats can't do nothing. They've got no power. They've got nothing. They don't have the House. They don't have the Senate. They don't have anything. They don't even have the state legislatures, really. Not many of them anyway. So they're powerless. But Chucky Schumer put 235 of these left-wing dickheads on the circuit courts and the lower courts right now. And they are causing us a problem, clearly. And they were put on for that purpose. But there are ways to get around them. Speaker Johnson, does he have a real Johnson? I don't know, probably not. But he even came out and said publicly that he's thinking of introducing legislation in the House to defund these district judges and district courts. And he said, we have the power to do it, and we can stop it. Well, stop talking about it and do it, okay? Do it. Well, there's also another thing that you can do, okay? Now, these judges are going after President Trump because he's using the Alien Enemies Act, which again hasn't been used since 1800 something or other, but who cares? It's still available, it's a tool, and it's at his disposal. And yes, it is legal, ethical, and constitutional to be able to use. Now, the judges are trying to step in and stop it. Well, let's talk about this act a little bit. What exactly is it? Well, it's pretty simple. What it does is the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 is a wartime authority that allows the president to detain or deport the natives and citizens of an enemy nation. The law permits the President of the United States to target these immigrants without a hearing and based only on their country or birth or citizenship. Okay? Now, let me get a little bit further. The President may invoke the Alien Enemies Act in times of declared war, or when a foreign government threatens or undertakes an invasion or predatory incursion against the United States and or its territories. The Constitution gives Congress, not the President, the power to declare war, so the President must wait for democratic debate and a congressional vote to invoke the Alien Enemies Act based on a declaration of war. But the President can invoke the law based on a threat or an invasion. So in other words, the President has inherent authority to repel these kinds of invasions. So let's put that one into perspective. Technically, Congress has to declare war and the President has to ask them to do it, right? But if there is an imminent threat and if there is a, quote, invasion from a foreign country, the President has inherent authority to declare the Alien Enemies Act. So, how do we take these judges out of the equation? Declare war. That's right, declare war. If he does a declaration of war, these judges can't do anything. Nothing. Congress could try to figure out a way to maybe rein him in, but we have the House, barely, but we have the House, and we have the Senate. So, if he really wants to, and if these judges keep it up, all he has to do is declare war. Declare an invasion and a declaration of war. And now the inherent authority of the President of the United States and the Aliens Act, the Alien Enemies Act, can go forward, should go forward, and we don't need to listen to any more of these left-wing radical extremist judges anymore. Those are my thoughts. What are yours? Put them down in the comments below. We'll see you in the next one.